Welcome back to another Android TV box review. I have the Alfawise Z28 Pro in for testing today, and this came in from Gearbest. This model is a new one out and it supports both 4K and 2K playback. I'll just put some of the specs on the screen for you, some of the main features. This has an RK3328 processor, completely different to the entry level boxes, a much more powerful processor. We've got dual band Wi-Fi, 3 USB ports, Bluetooth support as well, and a choice of 3 different models on this in terms of memory and storage. Let's have a look at the body of the box. The usual connectors on the back, the HDMI, AV, digital out, the LAN port as well as the power input, and 3 USB ports on the side. Notice the blue one is a USB 3 port, a faster speed, nice to see that. And on the other side we have the micro SD card slot. Next to that is a reset button. On the underside, not much to see apart from the rubber pads. Bit of ventilation there because it's a passively cooled chipset on this box. This is the power adapter, which is a 5-volt one. You'll get your own particular region. There's 3 different types available. This is the UK version, and the HDMI cable that is included. Fairly decent quality, quite thick. No gold plating on that, as you wouldn't expect at the price point. And the remote, fairly standard remote on this. This one's been around for a while. It's perfectly okay for a normal remote. It takes 2 AAA batteries. You don't get those supplied. Would have preferred to have seen the newer remote, which you can program some of the buttons on the top, but it's okay. Get yourself an air mouse though, or a keyboard. And the booting up the box, bit bright on the LED for me, but anyway, we shall continue. You see the boot up sequence now. Advertising the 4K quite heavily. It's pretty quick to boot up this box. You'll notice when you boot up, the menu layout is quite different to some of the boxes. It's just a variation on the media box theme. And you also have a built-in user manual. That's the top left icon, so that takes you through some of the controls and operation. Nice to see that. I'm surprised they don't do that more often. And you'll notice going through these shortcuts, you can add them to the bottom. And the pre-installed apps, there aren't actually that many on this box. It's pretty minimal install. You've got some basic stuff like YouTube, Chrome, Gmail, and there's a media center. You do have a Wi-Fi display for screencasting, and you can see at the bottom you can add those as you want, and that worked pretty well, the screencasting. The browser is Chrome, fortunately not the older one which came with some of the cheaper Android boxes that I've looked at, so the Chrome's a bit more up to date. You do have shortcuts for the Play Store and YouTube. Now YouTube, the version on this is the older one, so I'd recommend updating that where possible. They've changed the layout on it and it seems to run a bit better with the newer version. I'll install the latest one of those. You tend to find that with these boxes some of the apps need updating. I'm pretty happy with the screen layout, except the fact that there isn't a navigation bar at the bottom. There is a memory tool. And you can go into the settings. You can see that the sidebar comes out and you can access all of the settings on the box without actually changing the screen, so it won't dump you out of the screen. You can see here I've got the dual band Wi-Fi. It's got my repeater, it's picked that up. And that's a nice touch with the newer version of Android, so you can go through the settings without having to go into a completely different screen, and it will still play back. I'm playing back one of my own videos. Full support up to 4K. You can also move the screen around if you need to. You shouldn't have to do this with the correct resolution that's selected, but you can see just on the corner there, there's a bit of red there, so you can adjust it if you want. Into the storage, I have the higher storage version of about 16, so out of that you've about 12-13 gigs free. Now I did check for updates, but there were none available. It remains to be seen whether there will be later on. We'll just scroll through some of the other settings. Bluetooth's pretty handy for audio as well as file transfer, but also you can add game controls and things like that. It's not much different to the older versions of Android, but if you go into the additional settings, you'll get the standard Android look. What they have done is beefed up the security a bit on this with the permissions, so you might have to go through a few extra button clicks to get through to certain installing apps and things like that. That's not a huge problem to me. It's they've just tightened up the security side of the operating system. That was one of the complaints on the previous one. Everything else is pretty similar to the previous versions of Android. Some of these features are only going to be of use for things like phones. So you can see here the permissions has come up, and Chrome, you have to allow that. You'll see these come up, but it should remember the settings. So once you've done that, you shouldn't have too many annoying nag screens come up. There's a few ways to find files. I just downloaded Aptoid installer. You can use the Media Center and scroll through. These are the pre-installed ones. You can also change them yourself. There's also a file explorer. You can see here the app that I downloaded. There are other ones available, they're just standard ones, and you can allow the unknown sources. Just be careful with that. I usually use Aptoid, which I'm showing you here. That's because it saves you having to register with the Play Store, but make sure that you install the trusted apps. They have a green shield next to them, just to be on the safe side. You can also run updates as well from this for the already installed apps that you have. I just find it a bit easier to get going, whether you'll see another permission come up there. You'll see that a bit more often than you would have done on the older boxes and older operating systems. This is the new version of YouTube, which definitely runs a bit smoother than the previous one, so I definitely update that if you use that frequently. Now, it doesn't come with Cody, but I installed it just to see how that worked. And you'll have to configure the streams yourself with this, but it will take the latest version of Cody. And the launching performance on this box was good. You notice quite a pickup compared to the entry-level boxes. It's much snappier in terms of switching between the apps and launching the apps. Now, running a few benchmarks now. I'm running the Geekbench just to get a processor score. This is Geekbench Force, the latest one. You can compare it to the other reviews that I've done where I've run this particular benchmark, and it's a good score of 1651. It's pretty much on a par with the S905X boxes that I've looked at. It's about double the speed of some of the entry-level boxes like the TX2 that I looked at. Even though the number of the chipset and processors are lower, it's actually twice the speed of the cheaper entry-level boxes from Rockchip. And now onto the 3D performance. This would be useful if you're doing games, because some of the entry-level boxes are really just basic games that you can play on them. But on this one we're getting some pretty good frames per second scores. Now, I run this test with all of the boxes so you can cross-compare them and see exactly what the performance is between the boxes if it's important. They can pretty much all of them run 4K media playback, and so can this. But if you're into gaming, this box is again about twice as fast as the entry-level Rockchip boxes. Now, internet speed test was a very good result on this. I've got really good download speeds, possibly thanks to the dual band Wi-Fi. It's time to talk about the streaming performance. I didn't have any issues myself, either in full HD or in 4K, and the Wi-Fi connection was very good on this box, one of the best that I've tested. But they do vary, and there's obviously depend on your own particular connection, but that was another strong point. So with the box, really the performance is going to come down to whether or not you need that extra firepower that the box has. So it's pretty much twice as fast as the entry-level Rockchip boxes. This box isn't rooted though, and I'll just put a quick video showing you that on the screen. Don't know whether that will be an issue for you. So not too many areas to complain about. A couple of small points. The lack of navigation bar, I would have liked to have seen that. That can be quite useful to have. Also, I found the LED a bit on the bright side. That's being a bit picky. You can just angle the box around a little bit, and the older style remote would have gone with a newer version, but in other areas did a nice job. Excellent performance for the price, good spec. You've got dual band Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, as well as that additional USB 3 port, which could prove quite useful. So that's my conclusion with the box overall. Don't forget to check out some of my other Android box reviews where you can compare the performance of these different boxes and decide which one suits your needs best.